me.
Seema, would you mind going into slideshow mode?
Slideshow mode.
If you go to slideshow,
Slideshow.
menu item, slideshow.
Oh, menu item.
Like it's about 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, like halfway down. There you go.
Okay, cool. And
No, you click it and then hit start presentation from beginning. There you go. There.
okay. Thank you.
You're welcome.
So our peer group focused on the multi-family reboot effort. We are going through a multi-family reorg, and we were trying to focus our efforts there. So just some background. Multifamily is, as we all know, is going through a restructure, reorg. Teams are going to change. Folks are going to move around between different teams. And our organization is going to change from, we'll have 6 different functional groups, all headed by a senior program officer. So these reorgs are difficult, and we just thought, how do we ensure that we are successful, or what are the best ways to ensure some success? So the success of the restructure and ultimately CHFA depends upon thoughtful implementation and re-energizing the group's culture and team dynamic. And it depends on all of us how this goes through. And each one of us can contribute, starting with CHFA leadership, multifamily leadership, to each and every one of us. So the big goals were, how do we build trust within each unit and within each member within the new structure of the multifamily division? How do we build a more engaged, collaborative multifamily team? Create greater accountability and ownership of the individual and the multifamily's team product. So it's the individual and the team always. And like I just mentioned, all levels of the organization are active participants and have a role to play in the success of multifamily. Social purpose of CHFA's activities must be tightly woven into team's effort. Leaders at all levels should be encouraged and allowed to thrive. So this begins with CHFA leadership, multifamily leadership, to inspire the senior program managers and staff to find ways to make CHFA's mission a reality, walk the talk, help senior managers create a collaborative, purpose-driven workforce, and how to just reward teamwork. While the management can play the role, but ultimately the mammoth task it falls upon the senior program officers. They are the ones who would need to build trust within their own teams and with other members of the team. They are the agents leading their units, and they are the agents of change, and should model the change they wish to see in their team members. Because they have the way the structure works, the senior program managers are the tip of the spear that creates the cultural change by encouraging growth, positive thinking, a learning mindset within all the 6 teams and multifamily as a whole. Rob, Nandini, anything here?
Yeah, I'll just jump in and say that when we were talking, initially we realized that we had a unique sort of a perspective, because Seema and Chris are both in multifamily, and because of my role and because of Rob's role with interacting a lot with multifamily, it was we kind of batted around different ideas, and then like this kind of rose to the top, and we said, wouldn't it be great if as part of our team presentation and what we focus on in 2022 and beyond, that we make multifamily restructure a priority, not only at my level, but at every level, as Seema said. And the fact that it comes from us, from within and from, from all levels, I think is going to really make it an imperative and an important priority. And so I think I just wanted to add that, but Rob, feel free to jump in.
I think you summed it up very well. I mean, I think to add to that, the crucial importance of multifamily was another thing that was just somewhat obvious. So all these different factors when we were discussing pointed us in the direction of the need and the place, which is, I think, one of the most pressing needs for CHFA, which is the sort of cultural outlook of multifamily going forward.
Thank you, Nandini. Thank you, Rob. So continuing on how to do it, senior program managers are in best position to enable team members to go outside their comfort zones and challenge the tried and true assumptions. A lot of folks will, they say, oh, we've always done it this way. We need to find new ways if they're more efficient. And we should encourage those thoughts. Senior program manager will encourage the use of independent judgment, trust but verify, and brainstorm about possible solutions. Find a way to say yes, listen. Senior program managers will inspire and motivate team members to unscripted conversations with other teams, especially other departments, and move away from the formal processes as a crutch. Ask questions, build camaraderie, enjoy the journey. And the other part was staff has a role to play here too. I mean, we should all take ownership in CHFA's mission and accountability for what we do. We need to look at the bigger picture, and we all need to remember that we can all make a difference. We should share ideas, ask questions, and try to learn a couple new things every now and then outside our limited expertise. So everybody has to work together to make it a success. So we had a few other ideas. So one was let a different team member lead the multifamily team meeting every month. So folks get, a chance to speak. It builds their confidence, and it's good to hear from another person. Hold an all multifamily retreat and bring speakers and allow for team bonding. Oh, this was so cool. Hold pizza parties to show appreciation. Yeah, I think we should make CHFA a fun place. We work hard. This would be cool. Thank you, Nandini. Thank you. Reinstate the CHFA housing tour to get closer to the mission and touch and feel the work. I think this is so rewarding, just going out to what we are building. I think it's really a great idea. And report regularly on progress, not just progress, roadblocks, new ideas. I mean, let's just talk more instead of only talking work related. Let's talk.
I think the only thing, Nandini, great job, Seema. The only thing I would add is we realize that there's not one recipe for success, and we can draw on the examples of other organizations or other teams, and we can use them as inspiration, but ultimately it will come to really what will work for us, what will work for our team, our organization. And I think we can be flexible. We can, as Seema said, enjoy the journey, have fun, and then find ways to really, take it to the next level in terms of people feeling like a part of the bigger picture, people feeling like they are understanding how their work fits into the bigger picture, which is something I've heard a lot of people say, that they don't always understand what we do. And so I think we're trying to rebuild, and that's why it's called Reboot, because we think a lot of it works, but then because of the reorg and the restructure, we think there's an opportunity to really do even more. And we think it starts with all of us, and it starts with multifamily. It starts with, and when you said leaders at all levels, I really meant everybody, because it's not just someone who has the title of a leader, but anybody can be a leader, right? If you can show leadership in so many ways. And so that was what we thought would be impactful as well. That's it.
Is that the end of your formal presentation?
Yes.
Yes,
Well,
Deb.
you guys practiced, didn't you? Because you were exactly at 10 minutes. I love it. Let's open it up to everybody. Questions, some interesting ideas here. Even as an outsider, I have picked up a lot of interest, concern, questions, even anxiety about upcoming restructuring of multifamily. I know that is a big issue for you guys. So it's interesting that your team picked up on this and decided to pursue it. Questions or comments from anybody, please?
Yeah, I have a comment. I really love this approach, and I'm wondering, do you have any plan to like formally sit down with those senior program managers to kind of roll this out, or give them some guidance on how to move forward with this? Because I think this could be very applicable for other departments to use this type of model.
Yeah, I mean, I'm assuming I have to answer this question. Yeah, absolutely. I think we're going to have to make it an imperative, without, sort of making it an imperative. I think we have to encourage people strongly to buy into the culture change that we're seeking, and make it a part of how they can lean into the new multifamily reorganization. So yeah, I can see this being totally replicable.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. Great. Love it.
Other questions?
I have a question, just kind of to piggyback on Allison, because I think it is an awesome idea. I really like the how to do it and then the big ideas. Unfortunately, and I don't want to be negative, but we have all seen it, and we saw in our own presentation or our own peer group what we did. There are, I don't want to say a lot, but there are people who, how do you encourage them to buy into the new culture? There were some people that we had trouble participating in ours, which was a fun thing, and just because it's never been done, they can't be bothered, they don't want to talk to people. So how do you encourage people to participate or to buy into the new culture, especially people who it's always been that way, which I know was part of we're trying to get away from that. But does anybody have any recommendations on how you do that?
Yeah, Heather, I think,
Go ahead.
go ahead.
Go ahead, Seema. No, that's great. Go ahead.
Heather, I think we all have to be patient, because sometimes people feel they've not been heard in a long time, and they've like kind of given up. They feel there's going to be no change. But if we just give them a slight nudge and help them that no, you will be heard. And frankly, there's just so much of talent here. If we just push each other a little bit in the right direction, in the right words, I think we can make a change.
I think all the chatter that goes on, people pick up on the things that are going on. So if there's a lot of positive about what's happening, people are going to jump on board.
That's a good point, Shelley, like positive peer pressure, kind of.
Yeah.
I'm going to suggest that you guys check out what Dan Coyle, in the book that you all have, The Culture Code, he has some stuff in there about the impact that the people in the group have on each other. You want to be sure that you know where the bad apples are and figure out a way to minimize their input, their influence on the group. And he has some suggestions there that may be useful, because that's kind of what you're dealing with. You've got the naysayers, the people who say, ah, this isn't going to make any difference, or, this doesn't apply to me. You don't want their attitudes and influence to spread, and you want the positive ideas and positive ways of being to become the norm. Other thoughts or questions, comments?
Yeah, Joe, I enjoyed some of the action steps, and as I was hearing the action steps, I was reminded of the 5 practices of leadership that we talked about, and all 5 were demonstrated in your action steps, right? Being the first to model and demonstrate trust, and kind of giving up some of that cultural positional power, right? Demonstrating that there is going to be a positive shift in the culture. Inspiring a shared vision, going back to the mission and vision of who we are and why we do the work that we do. Challenging the process, really, just because it's been done this way doesn't mean we have to continue to do it this way. Empowering others, and then celebrating, right? All 5 of those practices were demonstrated in your action plan, your reboot, if you will. So it was really, really cool to hear from this end some of your takeaways. So thank you all for sharing, and thank you for the creativity that went into that.
Great. Well, if there is no more group conversation, let's segue right into hearing from the individuals in this peer coaching group about their own reflections. And Seema, you want to start, since you're the one on the tight time frame?
Frankly, though, before I started this, we've had things like this in the other places that I've worked also. And I was not sure it's going to be so impactful for me, but I learned a whole lot, and it was a very rewarding experience. It just expands your sphere of influence. The moment, if you think your sphere is just your family, then everything revolves around your family. But when you enlarge that to your unit, to your organization, suddenly everybody comes in the moment you expand your viewpoint. So I think that was a big thing, a realization for me. And it does show up in your, day-to-day actions also, because you begin to think that way. Thank you so much.
Excellent. Rob or Nanthony, which of you would like to go next?
Can't see
Nominate
now.
Rob.
She said she nominated me. Okay, I can't see her. I would echo what Seema started with there about skepticism, because I'm almost 10 years at CHFA, and I've participated in a fair number of events that are similar to this. But this one, I would say, like Seema said, brought me to a different place, because I think of the buy-in of everyone, and the buy-in up, throughout the organization, and the fact this is spread amongst people from all different areas. Just as in our little subgroup and in the bigger group, it's brought a lot more sort of, or forced me to be more reflective. And I think one of the main things I've realized when I'm talking about that, the time at CHFA, it's made me particularly think about personality types, and specifically personality types of people that I've worked with now for a long time, but have sort of come to maybe, some realizations that, I wouldn't have thought I would have come to, given the, the water over the bridge and the time in service. I thought sort of I had, you kind of feel like you get to know people and they are what they are, but I feel like this experience definitely brought me a different perspective to think about, or at least a new perspective of how to think about and understand, the working methodologies of people that I work with. And I think that's going to be valuable going forward.
Well, thanks for sharing that, Rob. This is the goal, to help us all open our own minds and revisit what we thought we knew and what we thought we knew how to do. There are new ways and new things to consider. Anthony, you are
Yeah.
on next.
So I don't want to repeat what they said, but when I first went into the peer coaching group and the first meeting we had, we were throwing up all kinds of ideas, and it didn't feel like it was coalescing around one thing. And then somehow we came up with this. It feels like the right combination of leadership development, culture change, and and all the stuff, maybe even process improvement, but it's not just process improvement. So I feel like it's really all encompassing. And I think it's, as Rob said earlier, it's one of the more important things we're doing this year for so many reasons. And the fact that it's coming out of this program or this training makes me feel like it has a really good shot of being successful and communicating the urgency and importance of this endeavor. I'm just really excited about it.
Oh, very cool.
Thank
Any
you.
closing comments or observations from anyone else about this peer coaching group and the work they did, the thinking they put in, and the learning that has come out of it for them, the insights? Anybody want to say anything else? Any closing words from the three of you? Nope. Okay, very good. Let's give a round of applause to the peer coaching group that we have heard from. Very good. Nice job. And how exciting. We're going to want to, Andre and I are going to want to hear later on how this goes when you really engage everyone else in it. It'll be exciting to see how that plays out. John Cabral asked for his group to go next because he has a commitment that's going to take him away a little bit later, but I said let's go second so that we don't miss out. So I think it is John, Lisa, Allison, and Masuda, right?
That's yes, you got everyone. Yeah. So yeah, I'm on mute. I'd say I'm very impressed with the last group. That was fantastic that you coalesced around an idea. Our group met on a regular basis, but really were more supportive of each other's work. So Lisa, Allison, Masuda, and myself really work in very sort of different roles within the organization. And so it was hard to sort of maybe pick something and focus on it. It's not what we did, but we did sort of check in on each other and listen to each other's projects, what folks were working on, listen to some of the barriers that folks might be running into, and just talk through it. Share just opinions and ideas. It was more of just a meetup and a chat and a support group. I think for me, what I learned is, I work in a department that tends to work with lots of other departments. So I'm fortunate enough that I've always worked in an area where I sort of know what all the other departments are doing. But I think with COVID and just the amount of work people are doing, particularly around the HAF program and stuff like that, I was surprised how much is going on I wasn't aware of. And so that to me was sort of eye-opening. And I think it's because we're all just sort of in our own world, in our own minds, figuring out what's going on. So it was good to hear some of the projects that the different departments are doing around the reorg, or Lisa around sort of HAF and what's going on there, and that ever-changing environment. So I don't have a formal presentation. It was just really a sharing of what we talked about. But for me, the group felt a little bit more like a support group, and just listening to each other. I think one of the things that I did take away is that maybe we need to do more of this sort of agency-wide, where people from very different groups get together and talk. And it doesn't have to be formal necessarily, but just the ability to hear what folks are working on. Because I think all too often, at least from my experience, is you hear folks at CHFA saying, I wonder what they're doing, or I wonder what they're working on. And it was good to sort of just have a better understanding of of what else is going on in other departments, knock down those silos, which I've been at CHFA for nearly 10 years. I think, Rob, you and I started around the same exact time. I always thought CHFA was a fairly siloed organization. It's gotten better, it's gotten worse, it's gotten better. I think it reminded me that we still have some room to improve there. So I don't know if Allison, Masuda, or Lisa, you want to expand on that, but that was my takeaway. But I really did enjoy listening to what other folks were working on and some of the challenges and similar challenges, but in very different areas.
Thank you, John. Yeah, you summed it up really nicely. Our working group was really more about really a support system, and particularly in a virtual environment. And for me personally, still kind of being somewhat new to the organization, I've really not had a chance to build rapport with people outside of my department. So this was great because I felt like I could come in and, we could problem solve and do it kind of outside of my immediate area, and to just have that support system. I found it really valuable. And I would encourage that this is something CHFA should consider. I mean, maybe just more informal and, use this leadership team to, problem solve, talk to each other. If you just need somebody to just listen to you and you're not comfortable maybe going to other people, kind of just really use this group as a support system.
So I, don't want to repeat everything that John and Masuda said, but, ditto, good support system. We all, like John said, we have different problems, but they're all the same. They're very similar types of challenges. We have challenges to work through. So, appreciate you guys.
Yeah, we did have some challenges with scheduling the meetings. I mean, and it gave us a chance to talk to each other about what all of our competing priorities were, which again, like John was saying, we don't necessarily know about each other. So it was very valuable from that perspective.
It also reminded me, so we had done a training some years ago, like the 7 Habits training. And one of the things that, especially listening to what my colleagues were talking about, it's the time constraint that they were under, the importance of quote unquote sharpening the saw, this idea that, you need to take some time to just, focus on yourself and re-energize. And the fact that sometimes it was so hard to schedule, sometimes it was folks were working, hours on a project trying to get something done. I do think there needs to be this refocusing on self a little bit. I think especially with COVID, I think we're all working virtually, which I think I enjoy, but there's this bleeding between sort of like life and work that's happening, that I think folks need to sort of step back and rethink that and sort of separate the two so they can re-energize. I tend to like the stuff I do, but it's important, for example, to get away. It's important to do something completely different. And I think that when we got to talk to each other, it was something different. We did get to talk, but I think, again, hearing what I heard from folks and how much folks are working, I think it's important to just do a little self-reflection.
You ready to open up to comments and observations and questions from everybody?
Yes.
Okay. The floor is open.
I think I've realized over the last 20 months or so how difficult it is to be in an organization that is that's going through what we're going through today, which is, we're mostly remote, we're a little bit hybrid, it's just, I don't think we're alone in this, but I think there's so many changes that are coming fast and furious at us, not only from the work we have to do, but just in the people we're seeing around us. Mm-hmm. And we don't even know who they are half the time because we haven't met them yet. Like I met somebody recently and I hadn't seen her in a while because when I first started 2 years ago, I was only there for 3 months before we went to lockdown. And I said, "Oh, I hadn't seen her in so long. It just seemed like I hadn't met her. Like it's just a strange experience. So I would love ideas that people have about how to bring these sorts of conversations together more often, but in an unscripted way. Like, how do you do that when you don't have the water cooler or you don't have the physical presence factor? I've been starting to do meetings in person now, and even though I know that, with COVID, that there's still considerations for health and safety, but like, it's so different when you can meet somebody in person. And I'm a big proponent of that. So I think what you created here is very valuable. And if you can use that as a touch point in the future, I think it would be really, really good for the organization as a whole.
Yeah, could I speak to that, or?
Yes.
Yeah, okay. So, one of the things that I find, so I love working from home, I'll be honest with you. It's worked out for me, even though when we initially went to lockdown, I thought it was going to be terrible. I was like, oh my God, I wouldn't need to be around folks in the snap. I really enjoyed it. But one of the things I found as a good balance is that every so often I meet up with someone for lunch. And so, and I'll go to like Parkville Market or something where it's open space, you can sort of speak freely. I kind of think there may be value in doing maybe, these lunches where folks can get together, and maybe even random folks who don't ever work together, and just sit and share lunch and just talk. They have the ability to still work from home or work from the office. They still have that flexibility, but they still get together and still have that water cooler moment. And really, our group, that's what it felt like. It felt like a water cooler moment, which I really found valuable and enjoyed.
You might consider doing something on the order of the big talk assignment that you guys had. If each of you made it a point to once a week or once every other week to reach out to somebody different and say, could we get together for a cup of coffee or a Zoom call or whatever, and use the fact that you've been in this program as a springboard. In this program, we learned the value of just sitting down and talking with somebody new. Like to do that with you.
Don't take away our presentation.
Yeah. It's Richard Axelrod in the book that we drew from on terms of engagement calls these leadership conversations, and he encourages people who are have the ability to own their own time, if you will, or schedule things, to actually make it a point to sit down on a regular basis with each person that you work with, and people in the organization that you don't always work with or you don't know well enough, and just have those casual conversations and begin to build relationships. What happens is exactly what you guys said in your peer group. You come to realize what other people are dealing with, and you understand that some of those things are similar to yours and some of them are very unique, but some of your experiences may be helpful. You have a different perspective. And if you've opened up the doors to that kind of sharing relationship, to go back to Dan Coyle, this is when, if you feel safe enough to say, I don't know how to do this, we've got a new problem here. Nobody's ever worked in this environment before. What are you guys doing? How are you dealing with it? This is why vulnerability, sharing the reality that you don't have the answer, that you're puzzled, that you're frightened, that you've screwed up or whatever, builds strength. It builds a stronger organization, because people don't say, haha, I'm glad you flubbed it up. They say, oh my God, maybe you could try this, or same thing happened to me. And you begin to bond. You begin to bond, and then you learn from each other. You begin to contribute what you have to the problem. You can build those relationships, and you can continue your peer coaching groups. Nobody says you have to stop doing that now that this program is finishing. How about hearing from you guys as individuals? Anything you would like to share with us from your own perspective? Who would like to go first on the team?
So I'll start. And so I'll self-identify. I think I had the hardest schedule, so thank you guys for bearing with me. And I just, wanted to kind of keep talking about what you were talking about. The big talk for me was my favorite part of this group, because it gave me, like everybody, the opportunity to make some connection with folks that I had maybe never even talked to, other than maybe a nod and a hello in the elevator on the way into work. So I thought that was great. I had great conversations with everybody. And Jonathan and I did go out and have a cup of coffee, and that was really nice, to not Zoom it, or, to be outside of the house or the office, having a cup of coffee. So that was, you're right. There was a lot of value there. So for me, that was my favorite part. And I took this super, I internalized everything. And I said, how can I use everything that we've learned and talked about to be a better employee, manager, contribute to the leadership team. So, it was a lot of internal personal growth. And then on the personal level, I know you, Joe, had said this to me, I need to kind of back off and do that sharpening my saw, making a little more time to for myself, so I can re-energize and come back and be, better everywhere, not just at work. So I learned a lot, and I'm, happy that I had the opportunity to go through the program. So thanks.
I'll go next. For me, the exposure to some of those tools, the Enneagram, the self-inventory tool, they gave me some pretty good insight to areas where I really could improve on to become a better leader. And I think it surprised me a little too, but maybe it didn't on the same token. So, and I am actually employing things to try to make some changes to improve in those areas. And I know I talked to Doe about some of those things during our coaching session. And dovetailing onto Lisa, the big talks were a big surprise for me. I started with a list of everybody. I'm like, okay, I got to get through this. Okay. And I found that I really enjoyed those conversations and got to know folks that some of them who I almost never ever talked to. Like I learned from Rob about the Glowacus, the mythical creature from Glastonbury. Anyway, it was eye-opening.
Nobody made a face, so you and I are going to keep that to ourselves.
But it was really a great exercise in getting to know folks, and it was a team building thing that I really just didn't expect, and I really appreciate it.
I also really appreciated this opportunity to participate in this training. I would say for me, the big talk was definitely one of my favorite components of this training. I'm by nature, I'm a people person. And so, and I really want to, just get to know people. And so I'd like to do this even outside of this group. That's kind of my goal that I want to work on. And the other thing that, I want to do is to not only within CHFA, but outside of CHFA, really getting to know our customers and the people that we work with and how we impact communities across the state. And so one thing that Nandini and I've been doing a little bit, and we hope to do more of this, is to get out in the community, especially now that the pandemic is easing, and to go out to some of our properties and tour those properties, meet with our customers, talk to the residents. And so to me, that really, at the end of the day, we're all human, right? And so if we really connect to that human side of ourselves, I mean, to me, I think that's powerful, because it shows our vulnerability, it shows who we are as human beings, and it allows us to really stretch ourselves kind of beyond what we think we are, and really kind of, explore those possibilities. I think sometimes beyond what we can imagine when you're just kind of looking at your screen and saying, okay, this is what I got to get done today. So to me, that was, I would say, one of the big takeaways.
Yeah, I'm going to echo what everyone has said. For me, I think understanding myself and where I like to be, like in my space of growth, was interesting, because I never really had thought about when I'm happiest at work. And it really was when doing those sort of self-assessments that I realized, yeah, that makes a lot of sense. It also opened my eyes to other folks, where they like to be and why sometimes I struggle with certain, certain things that we're working on in maybe groups where I think differently than others, or they think differently than I do, and sort of having that patience, like, okay, this is the frame of mind, this is where they start, and understanding that, I think, was really valuable. I personally think that to do that self-assessment sort of across the whole organization would be great. I don't remember if it was SEMA or whomever, someone on the group mentioned that they had worked somewhere where their Enneagram number was like either on their email, or it was like everyone knew who each other was. So to understand how people think when you approach them with ideas, I think would be kind of valuable, because then you can understand the response versus trying to figure out, well, where are they coming from? I think it was really valuable. So yeah, I really enjoyed the whole process. I really got to enjoy or hear what other folks are working on. The big talks were great. But for me, I actually just understanding myself more was actually something that I was not expecting, but it was a really great surprise.
Well, thank you all for sharing. This is very affirming. I'm sure Andre is feeling the same as me. These are the kinds of reflections and insights we hope come out at the end of any experience that we design. And we did a lot of things with you guys that were new, and it seems to be, at least for those of you that have spoken already, to be on target. Commenting, John, about the notion of knowing how other people are going to respond, or anticipating how they might respond, or why they are interacting with others the way they are. The Enneagram is a powerful tool for doing that. It's part of our onboarding at Leadership Greater Hartford. When everyone in the team has that knowledge base, it is amazing how helpful that is when you're working with each other, anticipating, we're in a stressful time right now. We know how each of us are likely to respond and react, and we know how we are going to react. And you can get off automatic pilot. You can take control of how you respond to things and how you interact with others in ways that help the whole team work better. Someone earlier this afternoon commented that anybody can be a leader. That's how we define leadership. It's not about being in charge. It is about consistently giving your best to the group and helping others do the same. Well, what is your best? And what do you need to contribute to the group? And that might be different at different times. And what are other people's opportunities to contribute? And what kind of an environment makes it easier for them to contribute their best, as opposed to getting defensive and hiding in fear? We can learn all that about each other, and it's really helpful. Other comments or questions before we move on to the next group? And we don't know who the next group is going to be. Okay, which group would like to go next? Heather's group. Okay, let me pull up a list so that Andre knows who to. This is Heather. Brenda is not with us. Shelley and Deb.
Sorry, I'm trying to, there we go. Okay. So we actually, I think you guys might like our presentation. Our group was Brenda, Deb, me, and Shelley. And I'm going to ask Shelley and Deb to just jump in, because we don't have a formal presentation, but we do have just talking points. But we found the experience to be encouraging, supportive, enlightening. We did a great job working together. Whoever put the teams together did a great job, I thought. So thank you. And in working together in this, we never had a lack of conversation or ideas or words. I think we found that the four of us all have a similar work ethic. Our discussion was very open. We did have one main challenge was trying to figure out what we wanted to do and what we were going to do. Deb, go ahead. We had an original initiative.
With Brenda and I being in multifamily together, we saw a split happen in multifamily of something that we thought, well, maybe this will give us the opportunity to try to make a change. So as we were trying to develop that, talking to Shelley and Heather, the plans for the reorg came a little bit quicker than we had anticipated. So we had to shift gears a little bit. But we shifted gears really, really quickly because between the four of us, single family, multifamily, and then business services. Well, personally, myself, Heather, I knew who she was, but we didn't really talk. Who talks to single family? We all need to. They make our money. No. And then Shelley,
Shove us in the corner downstairs. That's okay.
We didn't even know that it was split from human services. So
Right.
It was just great. We had some great conversation, and we said because of this, we had a great idea of what we could do. Heather?
Yep. So we decided that team building and meeting others, which everyone here had said, the big talk was one of the greatest benefits of this leadership group. So we decided that was essential for the authority. And we decided that we were going to start with our own teams. So I borrowed from the underwriting team to fill in single family, and we took Shelley's team and Deb and Brenda's teams, and we then created mini peer groups within our own teams. So in doing that, we went through, we know our groups, so we work together to ensure that the groups are made up of teams, or the teams were made up of people who don't work together. So we first went and split by department. And then we actually kind of took a look at the Enneagram types of the people in those groups and re-switched around. So we would have what we hope to be positive, really interactive working groups. So we set up some activities. We're actually still in the process. The first one was just an introduction, and we introduced what we were doing, why we were doing it, that we were part of it as a leadership program, that we really found the benefit of it. And then we had a second meeting where we did the NASA exercise, and it was actually pretty funny. We did have some people who chose not to participate, which was expected in some cases, but those who did, I think, really enjoyed it. And we popped in on on a group and listened, and you guys can talk about, I know my group, it was pretty funny and similar to me, although there was one person in the group I was in who obviously knew the exercise because he had the numbers, pretty close to spot on. But I don't know, Shelley and Deb, if you want to add about your groups.
I popped into a group, but I didn't put the video on, and I didn't put my camera or my microphone on, and just listened. And I was really encouraged. The group, there was someone that's from my team that is generally very shy, and I was curious as to how that was going to work. You could see the strengths of one another when they're talking, and it was just what I think we were hoping for. And watching my group, it was great. It was just seeing the interaction. And then when they finished, we did the same thing you did, Doe. We did the time. There was a breakout. We did the same kind of session ways, and then the group just started talking. They talked in general, and it just seemed to be so easy flowing. And And these are people that have never spoken to one another. So it was so encouraging that I know personally myself, we're going to continue this a little bit more and try to get others maybe to buy in as well, because we think it would be really good for the whole authority, but we're still going to work within our own groups. We do have another meeting scheduled. People right now are doing big talks within their own mini peer group that we created, but they were allowed to do it outside of that as well. And people are doing it. Some scheduled everybody, and then we said,
Yeah.
wait, you might not have enough time to do this. And we allowed ourselves to be part of that as well.
I thought it was really, with the NASA exercise, after the introductions, there was a member of Single Family's team who said, I'm really not up for this. I don't want to talk about myself. I don't want to get involved. And I said, okay, it's not mandatory. However, it's going to be fun. But then we since had a brand new employee start in between that first meeting and second meeting. And so I highly encouraged her to join, or I may have said, you need to come. But it was really good because she was super nervous because she knows nobody except for our small group down here. And she really enjoyed it. And I happened to pop into her group. And it was really fun. And like Adam and Kathy, have been here a year, but they've set foot in the building for the first time, a month ago or a couple months ago. So to have them on camera, seeing other people throughout, it was good. And like Deb said, they really only had to do the big talk, or were asked to do the big talk within their group. So their groups are 3 to 4 people. But there are some people, I know one in particular, who has contacted everybody in the whole team. So currently they're doing that, and then we have a meeting scheduled for the end of November to review the big talk. So what we found was that, like I had said before, not everyone was willing to participate, which is okay. That was kind of my biggest fear. But we had more people participate than I thought we would. Some were definitely more outgoing than others. But even the quiet ones, everyone who did participate and is participating had contribution. So it was pretty cool. And we hope that these established relationships will continue. I think it's awesome to get to know other people in the authority. There are people on this group, some that I work with all the time, and some that I barely say hi to in the hallway. I come in and take a right. I'm rarely upstairs or walking around. And like Deb said, we want to continue it. We want to meet periodically for additional activities, even if it's just a check-in. How's everybody doing? We're hoping that after the big talks, we get positive feedback from our teams. I'm thinking that we will. And then really what we hope is that other leaders in the authority will establish, mini cohorts and kind of make this a thing. And that's our presentation.
Very cool.
It was really enjoyable to do, and we were able to, the experience that we felt from what we experienced in our big talks. Again, everyone here is saying that they really enjoyed the big talks. You get to know each other, and I think trying to change the culture at CHFA, we need to understand one another as well. There are a lot of process improvements that need to be done, and we'll get there, we'll do it, but understanding each other and changing the culture of acceptance and everything is really should be a goal that we want to try to do. Everyone's overworked. We put on ourselves. We're working at home. We put the pressure on ourselves too. Work has to get done, but to try to at least let each other know that you're not alone. We're not alone out there.
comments, questions, observations?
So the groups that you set up were pulled from different from both of your departments?
From
So-
our teams, yep.
Right.
So Shelley's
okay.
department, single family, and Brenda and Deb. So their reports.
We're a total of 16. And I think we had 10 that participated in the NASA, well, 15 participated in the introductions. And then I think, was it 10 that participated in the NASA experiment? But then we included everyone with the big talks.
Yeah.
And we mixed the teams. We mixed, so it wasn't like my supervisory team. We made sure there was someone from every team within those little smaller teams. And we competed with some vacations and stuff too.
Do you think this is replicable? In other words, could there be something that comes out of this that's more, because we have what's called Teams now. It's like technology called Teams, and it allows you to like create teams within, our tech, our environment. I mean, I'm hoping people aren't always remote, but how do we make this a thing? Like, I know that's one of the last things Heather said, like, it's a thing going forward. Like, is there something that can come out of this? Because my fear sometimes is like, you have so much energy because you're in the program, and then once you leave, it kind of everything, because of inertia, like everything reverts, right, to the mean, as they say. So like, how do you keep that going? Is this something we need to do intentionally? I guess that's my question.
Yeah.
I would think so.
Yeah, I think for us, I think we've we've committed to, okay, we're going to do our best to keep this going, even periodically setting up, even if it's just a check-in, if we can't come up with a cool NASA thing, but to find things to do just to get people talking.
And I think just the four of us, well, it'll be three after a little while, but just scheduling something for just the three of us to get together and talk about things, I found extremely helpful, because Deb and Heather are very different than I am, but I valued their opinion, their recommendations.
I think it definitely is replicable. And like both had said, we can do this. We're trying to get our group to be comfortable. We're just at the comfort stage. It's like us way back when we first started. We're trying to get them at the comfort stage, but to have other supervisors do this as well, and then maybe rotate them and do it throughout the year, but not excessive, but just a little bit. And we found it to be really rewarding.
I want to point out that Axelrod, in terms of engagement, talks about connecting people to each other. Doesn't happen accidentally. You need to figure out ways to connect people to each other and help them get to know each other. And this is a wonderful model for doing that. Comment about the big talk. First of all, I want to know, you said you selected topics for them that you felt would be safe. Could you share what those topics were? What did you have them talking about?
It was work related, but it was, hey, what do you do here? What do you like about what you do here? How do you contribute? I should have it in front of me, and I don't. Do you guys remember?
Do you think that people stuck to the script? Because
No.
I think
Don't
Doe,
care.
you did give us recommendations,
Yeah.
questions, and I think we barely touched on a lot of those.
Well, and that's the beauty.
Yeah.
Right.
That was the beauty. It was
Mhm.
here, if you didn't feel comfortable or you weren't really sure of the other person, you kind of went with the
You had the script. Yeah.
But then I had a call with someone that I wasn't familiar with, and the whole conversation started off as like, how do you enjoy vacation? Or what do you do for vacation? And we went, and it was longer than I anticipated, and I canceled some meetings while I was doing it, because then we ended up talking about work too.
Mhm.
But it got into a really nice flow where I was like, you know what, I don't want to stop this now because it's going pretty well.
Mm-hmm.
I had someone I do not know at all. And, you know, where do you live? What's your commute? When we do go back to the office, oh, my husband's from Newington. Oh, did you graduate Newington High School? No, but we'll come to find out her husband, my father was a principal in middle school. So, I mean, just things like that, but it's open, kind of like what we all did. It's just comfortable conversation. So we gave them the topics, but I'm sure a lot of them didn't touch on them, which is okay.
What the activity does is give you permission to talk to someone about things that you never would talk to them about otherwise. It gives you an opportunity to open a door, and if the other person wants to walk in it, they can. If they choose not to, you try another door. Another way to use that activity is not to give them any question at all, but to ask everybody to identify or to articulate one question that they would like to ask everybody. And they ask the same question of everybody. And my question might be something like, doing this exercise, for instance, I've often used a question: if you were going to write a book, what kind of a book would it be, and what would be the content? What would you put in that book? Oh, does that open up some interesting conversations with people? And then they ask me their question, which might be something totally different. Doesn't need to be about work. In this leadership program, we felt opening up the doors immediately to issues related to the authority and how you interact with it made sense, but it can be completely open, which makes it, adds another dimension. I congratulate you on doing this. This is connecting people to each other. P.S. Another strategy that Axelrod uses is, in addition to connecting people to each other, he talks about creating teams for action. It may be that these peer groups, these mini groups, might decide to take on something. Axelrod suggests these are great groups to work on projects related to charity events, or, you know, let's all volunteer for Habitat for Humanity next week or next month, or let's get involved in a food drive for Food Share or something on that order. When people have a purpose to work together, they can learn to work together in really cool ways that then extend to the whole organization. This could just be a first step. I hope you guys do go on. Andre, you want to add anything to that?
Yeah, I added to the chat, but I was congratulations.
Oh.
I'm happy you were able to bring something to life, right? You went beyond just kind of conceptualizing. You actually brought it to life and implemented it. So that's awesome. But yeah, feel free to reach out to us long down the road. I mean, the program might be over, but our connections are forever now. So Leadership Greater Hartford will continue to be a resource for all of you. So if these peer groups do continue and you're stuck for an idea, send us a message and we'll go through our library of activities and try to find you something.
I was going to say, you guys use the NASA experience. We have stacks and stacks of experiences.
We'll call you then.
Do. We're happy to share. One of the favorite ones, I'll just tickle your fancy a little bit here. Andre and May, one of our colleagues, a number of years ago, created something called a photo scavenger hunt that is an absolute blast to do, even remotely. We did it with our staff last year when we had our virtual holiday party. Nobody was in the same room, but we had teams and we had scavenger hunts and we had to pull it all together, and we had a great time. It's fun to play together. Playing together is every bit as important as working together. So finding a way for people to play together is well worth it. I'm going to suggest we take a quick break before we come back for the last group to do their report, and then we have some other things to do. I have 1:45. You want to take 15 minutes? That way, those of you who have not eaten yet can eat. I can take my 2 o'clock medication, and I'm going to remember to turn off the recording. And Joe, thank you for reminding me to turn it on to begin with. I would have forgotten. I'm going to pause it right now, and we'll see you back at 2 o'clock for our last PCG report, okay? And Andre and I realized that we were in such a conversation with everybody, we have not heard personal reflections from Deb and Heather and Shelley, and we don't want to miss that. We realize you shared a lot of personal thoughts during your presentation, your group presentation, but let's hear from you individually. What are your personal insights and reflections from this whole experience? Who wants to go first?
I don't mind.
Okay, Shelley.
So to me, leadership has a lot of different meanings. And personally, I think that being a good leader is understanding the positives that everyone brings to the table, understanding the different personalities. One of my goals is to actually read more about the Enneagrams and to understand, similar to what Jonathan said, about just learning how to react and how to interpret what other people are saying and bringing to the table. I personally had, I thought that the big talks were great. I would say 90% of the big talks were very personal and helped me to relate more with the individual. We did talk a little bit about CHFA, but then it grew into something bigger. And I think that is also part of being a good leader, is to understand everybody, what's going on in their lives, and moving forward from that.
Okay.
I can go next. I agree with Shelley and Jonathan as well. If we can do the anagrams for our whole company, I love Jonathan's idea too. I find it difficult sometimes to put numbers on someone else. One, I don't think it's right to do that. And the other, I'm surprised by a couple of people here. Some are more obvious, but there's others that you're not sure. And it's really a great exercise, and it does help us to understand others better. And that's what I've taken away from this, is that I need to be more patient and more understanding, that not everyone has the drive that I do, and that I need to be able to listen more and let people be more active in the roles in helping in what we do, because that's it. It's helping what we all do. But I love the big talks. I thought it was very insightful. Even the parts that we talked about work, because it was half personal, half work, but to understand the frustrations of other departments and or the greatness of what they're doing as well, I thought was really nice to hear. And if we could do that and continue it, as Nandini had mentioned, I think that would be really valuable for our organization.
Thank you. I want to share with you all, I'm not going to forget you, Heather. Don't let me forget you. My new favorite Enneagram book is called The Brain-Based Enneagram, and the subtitle is You Are Not a Number. Understanding core types is like the first step in understanding the Enneagram. Our goal really is to understand where our core is, because that's where you go when you need to feel safe, and then figure out how to get out of that and how to access the assets of every other type. It's much more, and that's one reason we like the Enneagram so much. The first step is understanding core type, but this is not just labeling people with a number. It is understanding these are the assets and the liabilities of my type, because every core type has limitations. You're only seeing 1/9 of the world, if you will. And we find that it helps to develop compassion and understanding and appreciation for people who see the world differently than we do. That's the core learning for the Enneagram. Heather, how about you? What are your personal insights?
So one thing that really, and as you know, elementary that it is that really hit home was the difference between managing and leading, which is something that I honestly, I don't know that I ever really thought about that much, but there is a huge difference. Just because you're a boss doesn't make you a leader. So I really like that. The Enneagram was huge, Joe, on my one-on-one. You helped me because I had someone that I have difficulty communicating with. And so you just started asking the questions. Well, what about this? Well, what about this? And take a look at this. So that was helpful. And to be honest with you, I wish I had this training 25 years ago before I became a mom, because it actually applies to real life as well. And I was like, oh man, 10 years ago, I should have done this. But it doesn't, I like that it applies to real life as well, and real life, not that work's not real life, but personal relationships as well.
Great, great. Well, thank you all very much. Anybody have any questions or comments for the people on that PCG group? Okay, we're going to roll right into our final group, which I think has 4 people here today. Joe, I got to look who else is on the group. We've got Joe, and we have Claudia, Suresh, and Joyce.
All right, the 4 of you are spotlit. I don't know. You're here, so enjoy.
All right, so I will talk about this, and then we will all pitch in on this. So we as a group, Joyce, Claudia, Joe, and myself, we met a few times as a peer group. We took a slightly different approach with a lot of similarities in the outcomes as the other groups. So we started off with not knowing what, how, but we were committed in coming up with a recommendation for a task, an initiative for the group that helps the team. We wanted to see if there is something that we can do that we can recommend and make a difference. Something that is a short-term, long-term benefits for CHFA management. And we were cross-functional, so that helped us a lot. And in terms of workload relief, motivation, all these aspects we were looking at, we did a recap of the entire exercise that we took here. We took a look at what we learned, what we liked, what we like to continue, and also what was the most effective part of this. So the first meeting, the discussion we had was more intellectual. We were trying to break down what we learned so far from these meetings. We did a quick debrief of all the activities which took place, the ideas and thoughts so far. So we looked at all of that. We also discussed continuous improvement, so process streamlining, communication ideas, undertaking that will help CHFA. We looked at all that. The second meeting we had started like very informal setup with no meeting agenda, pure, open, frank conversations, what we did this week, what we are working on, things like that. And we started realizing that the casual aspect of this is working very well. We like these open-ended meetings. We have meetings with no agendas. There's no strings attached here. It reminded me or myself of some meetings I have with across other CIOs or directors with other quasi-state agencies at the national level when we talk to NCSHA, how we talk about what projects you're working on, what's working, what's not working, pitching ideas. It's the same group, same mindset. So we started liking that. And we all agreed that these no agenda meetings were very helpful and productive. And this is providing us a nice sounding board for each of us at the same level, same mindset, similar responsibilities. And we felt that this was a perfect setup where we met periodically, the same team, the same group, not adding subgroups, not adding other people. This 4 of us being cross-functional is helping us a lot. And if we meet periodically, it's great. It's just helping us to bounce back ideas with the team. And the next meeting when we met, we converted this meeting to such a similar meeting when each person talked about the current tasks and hurdles they have, open conversations, discovering common elements in our stories. We started discussing that and we started liking this more and more, and we started like waiting for the next meeting. So we wanted to meet and we wanted to talk. There were several similarities and frustrations in the stories that we shared. And it was candid conversation, so it was great. We had a nice sounding board, and we had a sense of comfort and motivation from these conversations. And now, towards the end, we decided this is what we want to recommend. We want to recommend that this group continues to meet ongoing, maybe once a month or so, periodically, so we can talk about these cross-functional items. The group could meet informally with no agenda, and probably it's the most effective and best experience we had from this training exercise. And key points on what we liked is the simplicity here. It's very simple, no agenda, very informal, and we're meeting with peers who act as a sounding board, open conversations, and talking to people at the same level, and we can relate to each other. So this is similar to the concept, but simplicity and informal aspect is the highlight here. So now I open up, and this is my introduction. I'll let everybody else pitch in.
For me, it was about relationship building, meeting people that you don't necessarily talk to every day, learning about them from all different aspects, learning what frustrates them, what motivates them, and just really acting as a sounding board, a support group. So we took a very introspective approach to this. And as we went through meeting after meeting, we found that people actually liked coming to the meetings and having that internal network of people that you could go to, that you were beginning to develop a relationship with and a trust with. So it became easier to help even just listen, act as a sounding board. So that's ultimately, it was really not about the outcome. The outcome just kind of came. It was about the relationship building. It was about the process that we followed, rather than actually coming out with, an outcome. The outcome came from that.
I'll go next. Through my career, I've been in a lot of team building exercises, supervisory exercises, seminars, conferences. And I felt that this one was not only different, but probably the most effective for me, because I've been a leader for a long time. I've been a manager for a long time. I think it took me years in my career to understand that there was a difference in what it meant to be a leader. I'm not suggesting that I am the epitome of leaders by any means, but I know that based on my strong leadership skills, I am where I am today. And I mean, not in position at CHFA, but just the remarkable staff that I have working with me, around me, supporting me. We support each other and we're so close. So what this did was not only reinforce that, but coming together in this breakout, the four of us, individuals that I really don't know on a personal level, with the exception of Suresh, because we do work so closely together. It was a wonderful experience, because I honestly went into this reluctant and hesitant and thinking, oh, here we go again, another one of these, that we'll talk and talk and talk, and yeah, we'll apply it for a short while and then it'll be gone like everything else. And I started looking forward to getting together with Joe and Joyce and Suresh and having these meetings, no matter how crazy or hectic my day was. I found myself devoting that hour to speak to each other, and it wasn't like we had to be on the phone for an hour. We just all really enjoyed discussing things. We talked work, we talked personal, we talked struggles, we talked where we came from. It was personal and productive and effective. And I think because of this, we came to that. And I appreciate it because I felt that, everything that was taught was really great. But I think what I took out from it the most is about looking at myself internally. How can I change myself? How can I make myself a better person, a better friend, a better mom, a better coworker, a better manager? And this group really kind of helped enforce that as well. And I plan on continuing this journey with these 3 other individuals because I really look forward to meeting with them.
Yeah, I think that's so true. I mean, these are kind of arranged groups, but who knew? I think it just speaks to the fact that we have a lot of really terrific people at CHFA, and I don't care if you slice it, top down, left, right. We're going to end up with decent people to interact with, and I forget who said it, but we had candor, we had humor. We talked about things that don't necessarily work for us with this training. We also talked about some of the aspects of incorporating change and facilitating change, and how best to do that, and how that best practice was inconsistent with some of the change that we were seeing around the organization. But we were able to work through that together and find the pluses and the minuses and what was actually happening internally. So it was good to talk to people that didn't necessarily have a role or a stake in say the multifamily reorg, but shared some thoughts that that maybe provided some support or clarity, or just a different outlook for what it is that we're going through.
Well, thanks for sharing all that. Let's open it up to the group. Questions, comments, observations?
So I have a question. How were the groups, or maybe you won't share the secret, put together? Was it at level, different people from different areas? Was it random?
Would you believe me if we pick names out of a hat? That's not what we did. That's not what we did. Actually, we asked the folks in HR to mix the groups up, both the cohorts and then the peer groups within the cohorts, to try to get people who didn't work together ordinarily, no supervisory relationships and that kind of thing. So I'm not sure what else they used, but the goal was to connect people together that would likely not be working together closely throughout their normal day-to-day work, and who would be comfortable working together. Anthony, can you add anything to that? I don't know to what extent you might have been involved in that. I
was not involved in that.
I didn't think so.
Yeah, no, it wasn't.
Yep. But it seemed to have worked out. It seemed to have worked out with the goal that we had to, all of this is part of the overarching goal to influence a changing culture in the organization that would be collaborative and inclusive, and position CHFA to be more to position the organization to be more receptive to changes and innovations that the environment demands. I have a question. You guys talked about doing this on a monthly basis. Were you speaking of your own peer coaching group or this entire cohort?
You're speaking about the same team, the peer group meeting continuing to meet because we enjoyed it so well. We want to keep it going, and it's helping us. It's a healing process than anything. It's more like a sounding board.
Yep.
It helps us a lot. It did help us a lot.
And Suresh, I think you had noted on a couple of occasions that it seemed like our own little Primex group. So if we were struggling with issues or working on issues, we had a good 3 or 4 other people with us to work through it.
That is not at all counter indicated. I mean, that's a part of what we hoped would come out with many groups. I'm sure you guys have heard that every PCG had its own kind of culture, its own mini culture, its own way of approaching things. I got lots of emails from people in both cohorts about what is it we're supposed to do in the peer coaching group. And I tried to give enough guidance that people didn't feel like they'd been thrown into a swimming pool and didn't know how to swim, but also enough flexibility that each group could figure out its way. I find, and Andre, I'm sure you'll agree, that anytime we have a group that is organized into smaller groups like teams or task forces or peer coaching groups, every group has its own style, its own personality, its own way of working. And when they report to each other, sometimes people say, oh my God, I never could have done that. That wouldn't have worked for me. And others say sometimes, oh, we could have thought about that. And it's just, it's very individual. Leadership Greater Hartford launched a new, I don't know whether to call it a program or an experience, about 1.5 years ago, about a few months into the pandemic. It was our sense that people leading organizations, the CEOs and executive directors, would be floundering around a bit when everyone was sent home and suddenly we're working remotely. And we did a needs assessment asking people, what are the kinds of concerns you have? What are the issues? And I heard everything from, I don't know if it's okay to ask people to turn their cameras on so that I can see their face when we're having a meeting, to really major issues. My assistant director or deputy director is in the hospital with COVID. I'm afraid she's going to die. She's also one of my closest friends. We have worked together for 25 years. And now I'm concerned about, have I prepared the organization in case this happens to me? I mean, it was this range. What we did was organize an opportunity for 9 or 10 of them to come together once a week for 90 minutes and talk about what they needed to talk about, just as we heard this peer coaching group did. They learned to connect with each other in a trusting way. When we finished the 5 sessions that we had planned, that group decided, just as your peer coaching group did, that they wanted to continue to meet once a month. And 1.5 years later, they are still meeting together. And you never know quite where the conversation's going to go. I was invited to be a member, not a facilitator, but a member. And I don't like to miss those because they are so important. We've done it with a second group as well. The world is shifting around us. People don't know. It's not in the books about how to deal with the kinds of things we're all dealing with. And knowing that you've got a relatively small group of people that understand you and that support you and that you can go to and learn from, it turns out to be very helpful. I encourage you to continue that. I'm glad your group and the other group has thought this makes a lot of sense. Other comments or questions from the group before we go back and hear from these folks individually? Okay, let's give you a couple of minutes to share other individual personal insights that go anything in beyond what you've learned from this wonderful presentation that you've shared.
I can start. There's just a lot of learning went on in these modules. A lot of information was shared. So for me, leadership is just, you don't know everything, and it's about continuous learning, looking at things from different perspectives. I think one of my biggest takeaways, and I'm trying not to repeat a lot of what was said, so it's hard going forth, is just the importance of trust. how fragile it is, how difficult it is to obtain, and how quickly it is to lose. And so for me, it was about building relationships so that if something does happen, perhaps someone will give you the benefit of the doubt with you. If you don't have trust in to me, it's a foundation, it's a building block. If you don't have it, you're not going to have all the other fundamentals that we talked about, like, building a safe environment, being vulnerable and being able to make a mistake and own it and try to work on it and improve, or really reaching the organization's fullest potential. And so that to me really set home. So I thank you for the class, the information that you shared with us. It was invaluable. It's not like we didn't know about it, but having that refresher and that new perspective is so important. So I do thank you for working with us through all this difficult time and all the information you shared. So I appreciate it.
Thank you, Joyce.
Welcome.
We have 3 more people to hear from.
I can go next. To start with, this was a perfect team. Whoever created the team, kudos to them. It worked out very well. It was the fact that our discussion was focused on how simple this is, how informal this is, and why didn't we think about this before? So this was a great achievement, and there's no presentation by our team by design. We want to keep it simple. We don't want to go formal and have a presentation with this. I personally enjoyed all the interactions with the team. I like that it was cross-functional. We don't see each other. Now here's a chance to talk. And I can talk about IT, I can talk about my projects, and I'm getting an honest feedback. I have folks who are now listening and giving me an honest feedback. It's no strings attached here. So that worked out very well. And I got to understand and realize that I'm not alone here. I got a team. I have people with the similar frustrations, similar issues, similar responsibilities here talking, and I get to hear their stories too. And it was not formal, so we are not always talking projects and business and technical aspects. We're talking about other things. So that was great. Even though it was a predefined, we would like to continue with the same team. I'm going to echo that again because we like the team so well. I like the team so well, and we plan to continue this. And we came to the understanding is that the more formal this becomes, the less effective it will be. So just the understanding from what we learned the first meeting and the second meeting, I mean, we're getting too technical about it. And then we really enjoyed this conversation, and it was, lack of a better word, it was healing and comforting for us and we were looking forward to these meetings.
Thank you.
Yep.
Joe, are you ready to go?
Sure. We've heard a lot about leadership, and a big part of it, at least for me, is it's about character. It's about integrity. It's about making yourself valuable to your team, the people around you, the people that you have to do this with day in and day out. But when you go through change, that's where the greatest challenge comes, because it's not just navigating through a different way of doing it. When you try to make yourself valuable, and you put the interests of the team ahead of yourself, that's an important thing to do, even though when you know you're heading into change and you probably are going to come out with a reduced role on the other side, you still have to make sure that the team is more successful than yourself. So So that's what I try to do. That's what, my teammates, helped me work through during these discussions. So, change isn't easy, but if you focus on the team, it gets better.
Thank you, Joe. Claudia, you're our finale.
Well, it's not going to be too interesting. So, but I think I covered a lot of what I was feeling in my remarks a little earlier, but I want to say thank you so much, because what I did appreciate so much of coming to these meetings was not like I didn't appreciate all the rest of you really, but I so appreciated you, Doe. You are so interesting. Your stories, I always looked forward to them. I look forward to reading your book. I hope it's going to hit the top 10 list soon. And I really, really did enjoy it. Coming together with the group, as I mentioned earlier, I really enjoyed our conversations. I enjoyed how, touching on what Joyce had said, building trust. And, I wasn't expecting that it was I wasn't expecting the outcome that it became. And I have to say it was very positive. And, I gained a different respect, for these individuals, a different appreciation, and a stronger bond and friendship. And I really appreciate that. And I look forward to meeting with them once a month in order to discuss something or discuss nothing. But, I look forward to that. And I think that, as I had mentioned, this is new because I've never experienced something like this. And I don't remember us ever going through an exercise like this here at CHFA in my time. But it definitely fostered team building at a different level. Not like, it's not as if we were working on a task or working on a project. It was work, but it wasn't. It was pleasant. It was enjoyable. There was no structure, as Suresh said. There was no agenda. And I think that's what made it so enjoyable, is that it was free. We were free to be ourselves. We were free to say what we needed to say. We were free to open our minds, and comment. And honestly, if I felt like saying, poop on this, then it was okay, because it was okay for me to be frustrated in that moment and be like, poop. And the three of them would come together and say, well, have you considered this, or have you looked at that, or, maybe, you need to let it go, that kind of thing. And honestly, every single time that we get off a call, I found myself at some point within the evening or the next day or within days reflecting on some of what we said. And I appreciate them, and I appreciate you and Andre and everybody.
Well, thank you very much. This is very affirming for us because, as I say, we put together the parameters and the framework for what we hope will be a learning experience that will not be one and done. Like somebody said, it's not like you've never gone to a seminar before or never participated in leadership training, but the goal here is to change and move in new directions. Leadership is a lifelong journey. Anytime you think you've now learned it all, you're in trouble. And so are the rest of us, because you think you have all the answers. And the world changes around us. So any other comments to that?
I have one question.
Yeah.
Okay. So one of the things I noted that Suresh said, which I thought was interesting, was that he liked they liked the fact that it was sort of organic, right? It had grown out of this training, but that it didn't have an agenda, and you kind of went into it with no expectations, and then they gained a lot in terms of their what they got out of the group. But if we're going to make it so one thing you had said earlier, Doe, was that in Axelrod's book, he talks about you can't leave it to chance, right? That you allow people to network, but it sort of happens. You have to make situations like that happen. Mm-hmm. How do you do that and maintain the fluidity of what Suresh was talking about?
Are you asking me that?
Yeah, I was just curious, or anybody else.
Because if-
Anybody else have some thoughts about that?
I think it happens or it doesn't. I don't think you can force it. I mean, we were very lucky. I definitely expect to talk to Deb and Shelley and, you know, Brendan in the near future, but continue. But I think it's up to the people in the groups. I think it's, you know, some planning, but some just sheer luck. I mean, you guys all got along, you're on the similar page, like Claudia said. She can, you know, say poop on something and you guys will either call her out on it or support her or try this. And I don't think you can create that.
Other thoughts? My response would be, is that what has to be structured is the intent to connect. Maybe it is, if you're the supervisor of a unit, making sure that once a week you are sitting down for 15 minutes with somebody in your unit and you rotate it around and make sure that you're touching base with everybody on a not necessarily work-related thing, you know, coffee hour with the manager or whatever. People value that. They want to know that you actually know they're there and that they have something to talk about and that you're listening. The content of what you talk about in those kinds of things can be very freewheeling. The other piece I would just remind you of is that 65-35 percentage of time for any team. 35% of your time ought to be focused on relationships and process, not all task. When we focus strictly on the task, and this is where, you know, you've got there's a fine line between too much structure and not enough. Every group, every time you have a department meeting, it can't be with no agenda and no task. That's not where you do this. But even in department meetings, you recognize that it's important to acknowledge that you need to spend some time on process and relationship. Because if it's just about the task, if it's just about getting the work done, people will be real glad to get out of the meeting and go home and forget about anything and everybody and everything they do at work. You really have to make those connections. It becomes a retention piece. It becomes a part of why they want to come back to work tomorrow. So I think it's a blend. Andre, you want to pipe in?
Yeah, I think it really depends on the objective of that meeting, right? So start from the end in sight. And if the goal is to build relationships, do you need an agenda to build relationships? If the goal is to accomplish X, Y, and Z, you might need a little more structure. But I think, you know, as we've been saying, relationship building is really just an investment of time. And so as leaders within your departments, if you're creating the time and the space, that might be enough. And you know, our mantra has been test and adjust. You're probably not going to get it right the first time, and that's okay. So try small changes, try this week. If it works, cool. If it doesn't stick, move on to something else. But test and adjust, definitely.
A strategy that, you know, when you think about meetings that are more formal, that do have agendas, that do have tasks to complete, but that still need to have people know each other and connect to each other, you might incorporate a part of beginning of the meeting. We do this a lot in our staff meetings. First 10-15 minutes of the meeting is designed as some kind of a team building exercise, a sharing, a check-in, the little bit of check-in that we did today, a word or two to describe where you are. Boy, we found out who was a little nervous, who was preoccupied with other things. We heard some people were really excited to be here. Some people were already thinking about when this is over. It gives you it just opens the door to say, I'm a person. I'm a whole person here. And the rest of my life didn't end at 12:30 today when we clicked into Zoom. Recognizing that in the workplace is very important, as we've all learned in the pandemic. And when we're working with people remotely, we even see what's going on in their house half of the time. That's been one of the insights all of us have gained in the pandemic. Andre?
Joe, I saw a few hands go up from people in the
Okay.
room who had some additional things to share. So we'll start with Deb and then we'll go to Joe.
Thank you.
This is a little outside. It's probably going to take someone by surprise, but CHFA for years has worked with the Con-Narrow organization, which is mostly made of housing authorities and other consultants for the affordable housing group with the housing authorities. There was recently a convention up at the casino, and they honor scholarship winners. They select scholarship winners, and CHFA contributes to that. Well, Nanthani participated in that to give one of the afternoon speeches. And it wasn't about the speech as much as there was a delay that occurred because we were waiting. One of the recipients got delayed in traffic. So there's a lot of downtime. And I have to say, it's probably the first time with my experience with leadership from CHFA, she started asking questions and she wanted to be introduced to the people. And she took the time instead of walking out and hobnobbing with other people. She went and asked and said, can I meet everyone? And I can't tell you how much that was appreciated by the group, because no one has really done that. They've only talked to like the other board members, but this was for anyone. And she listened, and I have to say, and this isn't, to say, to hobnob with Nanthani, but this is to say, this is where it starts. And it wasn't something organized. It was very informal, and it just happened. So things can just happen like that. And I got so many remarks and comments after the convention about that and how much that was appreciated. And I just wanted to thank Nanthani for that with everyone else as well.
Cool.
Thanks, Deb. At first I thought, how am I going to fill the next 30 minutes? And I said, well, I'm going to go meet these people. And Deb, you were just really amazingly smooth, if that's the right word. I mean, you just fell right into the sort of role because you know all these people. And it felt good to have you sort of chaperone me around and introduce me, because it would have been a little awkward for me to just go up to people and say, I'm Nanthani, who are you? And so you played that role very well. Thank you very much.
Thanks, but it was you. They really, really appreciated that you spoke with them and from the heart.
Did we miss any other hands or any other
Joe
friends?
had his hand up.
Joe's gonna pass. I think
okay.
the time had passed. So anyone
Okay.
else have any remarks to share before we get to our next activity?
Yes, I would like to make another point that, again, the key takeaway here is the being informal aspect of it. This is a peer group. So we try to do this in IT. So IT, we have informal meetings and we meet. I know Claudia does with her team. And this is informal. It can be called informal, but it's not a peer group. It's still, there's a hierarchy behind it. So whatever you say, it's not that open. This is a group, there is no hierarchy. It's a flat structure. It's all my peers, folks at my level. This is my sounding board. In my team meetings with IT, I'm not sounding my frustrations with them. And this is my chance. This is my way to discuss this. And I have 3 people listening, and they're listening and giving me honest feedback. And that is true honest feedback that I did not get from anywhere else. Yeah, I value this a lot. And I think it's making it informal and making it peer level, so it's a flat structure, helps a lot. So I'm beating this, but again, that was a key point here that made it work.
Which is why we call them peer coaching groups. You are peers and you can coach each other in a safe environment. Yep.
Yeah, so the more formal this becomes, the pure concepts fades away. Comes the entire senior management. You lose the focus there. There's having the same team, and I insist the same 3 folks throughout, it's like a buddy system. So now I have a team which is cross-functional, 3 different floors. We're all from one from each floor, so, and it worked very well for us. So
I get your point, Suresh. It can become too, like, what's the word? Like, not theatrical, but like stage managed, you know, where you're like, here are 4 people, talk to them. Like it's gotta, and yet there's, like Doe was saying, like the intent has to be there. So maybe, you know, the organization doesn't bring people together. The organization builds leaders or builds, you know, helps to build people who can do that of their own accord with their groups, outside their groups. Everybody models that behavior and then it becomes commonplace, you know. I guess it's one way to do it.
Let's move on. Andre, I'm turning it over to you.
Yes, so we are going to continue the debrief, but we're going to do so in some breakout rooms. So we're going to do a traditional 3, 2, 1 kind of activity. I'm putting it in the chat now, and I'll walk you through. So if each of you can think about 3 things that you have gained or obtained from this leadership program, 3 things you'll remember down the road. We started some of that with our personal reflections today. 2 things you're still interested in learning or further developing. It could be 2 questions you still have about any of the experiences or conversations or assessments. And then 1 action item, 1 thing you're doing now as a result of what we've talked about in this program. So that's the structure based on our recent conversation. If you don't keep that structure in your breakouts, that's okay. But here is some structure: 3 things you learned, 2 things you're still interested in further developing, and one thing you're doing as a result of this leadership program. So we're going to put you in some breakout rooms. How long do we have, Doe?
Well, you've got a good 15 minutes.
Perfect. So we'll have everyone kind of just brainstorm these 3 items, and then we're going to bring you back to the large group and ask for a few people to share with the large group.
And there are 3 people in the groups. I think everybody is assigned to a group, and I'm going to open the room now. If you wind up not assigned, you'll still be in the main room and then I'll move you, but I think I've got everybody. Everybody know what you're going to talk about? Okay, here you go.
All right, welcome back. Everyone will be back in 2 seconds. I see some of you smiling, so hopefully you had some nice conversations. Let's bring back to the full group. I want to hear Doe, and I want to hear any of the 3, 2, 1. I'd like to focus more on the action, what all of you are doing as a result of this program, but you can obviously share lessons learned and things that you still are learning. But we'll ask a few of you to share out loud. So any brave souls want to share what you're doing now as a result of this program?
We talked about the way we are changing how we deal with people based on the Enneagrams, recognizing the positives that people do.
That's wonderful.
Yeah, I mean, I was in Shelley's group and, you know, I was talking about how you get so wrapped up in the task that you don't take the time to recognize staff for their good work, you know, when it is good work. So I'm really trying to make an effort to do that when I think I was lacking in that before.
Courage the heart.
Mm-hmm.
And
It's my short. My
Understand.
short suit too, Allison. I have to work consciously on it because I'm always ready to get on to the next thing.
Right. Yep.
And really understanding that appreciation and recognition, there's not a one size fits all. You really have to know the person
Mhm.
to really understand how they like to be valued and recognized as a team member.
Mhm.
Absolutely.
And so that kind of leads into something our group was talking about, that we learned that, folks all have different styles, and you have to really learn how to, we weren't talking about recognition so much as communicate in the style that best works for that individual. And, that can be a lot of work on the leader. But that's how to get the most out of the team. So, and then we learned Enneagram, we learned, more, a little bit more about ourselves and, how we have our own particular style.
Yeah, absolutely. You manage things, you lead people, right? And both are needed, but you have to make an investment of what am I going to do differently today to make sure Doe has all that she needs to do her job well, but also to understand that she's a valuable member of the group. Absolutely. Other thoughts, other action items, other things you're going to do?
So on our team, it was Heather, Joyce, and myself, and Joyce can't seem to shake me. She got stuck with me again. But it ended with us making a motion to adopt Heather into our group. So change continues. But we talked an awful lot about things that we learned. But I think for both Heather and me, who are in the active midst of change, we're just continuing to learn how to adapt and cope and grow and provide feedback and navigate our way through that change, which is more immediate for us than for some of the other folks in the cohort.
Thank you, Joe.
In our cohort, well, I was in a different cohort than the peer group one, but it was all multifamily. It was Masuda and myself and Deb. And we talked a lot about the restructure because it's top of mind for multifamily. And we felt that this training really helped, helped us make some decisions when we were rolling out the communication around the restructure. I think for the better. And, we all noted that that communication is going to be important moving forward, because there's a real danger of creating silos as a result of the functional organizational structure. And so we really reiterated the need to keep these lessons, these tenets about communication and transparency and all those things we learned in this training, top of mind and important for us as we move forward.
Yeah, wonderful. Change is very uncomfortable sometimes, right? But we're humans. We have to change. We have to continue to evolve and grow. And the beauty that, like Doe said, we're all on this leadership journey together. We're all at different stages and phases, but we're all here together. And one thing that really moved me with all of your individual responses is all of your individual ownership for professional and personal growth. I mean, I think I heard that in every single one of your report outs, is that, not only was I here, but I really took ownership of my own individual learning. And I think that's why some of you are feeling that this leadership experience might be different from others, because, Doe especially put that on you, right? We told you we're going to hold you accountable to make sure that you have an opportunity and space to really push yourselves as individual leaders, so that way you can bring your talents and gifts to CHFA as a whole. So I'm just so appreciative of the vulnerability and the authenticity you each demonstrated in working with your peer groups, but also in your individual responses and within our coaching. I know we've had some really robust and meaningful conversations through those experiences. So in continuing with the idea of soliciting feedback, we want to get your feedback now on the overall program. So if you check your emails, I'm sure some of you already have, even though you shouldn't have. I know I have mine open too. Doe has sent you a link for a survey, and we're going to give you about 10 minutes now in live time to fill out that survey. So we're going to ask you about the 6 modules. We're going to ask you about some of the learning opportunities, and we really want to hear from you individually as to what you liked, what you didn't get so much out of. If we were to do this again, what would that look like? Because we are mindful that this was a new initiative and it seemed to have worked based on the 2 cohorts, but we could do it better in the future. And we really want to be mindful that each of you experienced this differently. So please take about 10 minutes, fill out the survey, share with us your thoughts and feedback. And then after the 10 minutes, we'll close out and gift all of you some additional time back into your day. Any questions?
We will come back.
We will come back. Yeah, you can turn your camera off, stay in the room, but fill out that survey, and then we'll do a final closing conversation. Start the recording. Great minds, Doe. Great minds. All right. Back to you, Doe.
Oh, I was going to give it back to you.
I'm giving it back to you.
We're throwing the ball around. We just do want to say thank you. This has been a real pleasure for us. We have learned a lot about your organization, about the wonderful work you do, and about those of you that are so committed to it. One of the things that has really jumped out at me is really, that's the word, how committed you all are to the wonderful work that you do, which many of us in the community don't know about and are not aware that you guys are part and parcel of building a stronger foundation for the community. And what Leadership Greater Hartford is all about is building strong and vibrant communities. Shelley is back. Here we go. We appreciate the opportunity to partner with you, to strengthen what you do, because what you do is so important to our community. We're going to give you just a couple of minutes, maybe a kind of the opposite of what we did, or the similar thing to what we did, checking in. 1 or 2 words about where you were coming into the session today. How about 1 or 2 words as takeaways for concluding this experience? Anybody want to share 1 or 2 words? It's going to be your final parting words to your colleagues or to us or to whomever.
This is Deb. I don't think this is a conclusion. I think it's a beginning of a good future of where we need to go.
I like that, Deb. I like that. Not a conclusion, a beginning.
Someone I think it's refreshing. It's something new, something to look forward to, and change isn't always bad. I keep telling myself that. So this could help with that.
I also was going to add that I realized that it's not a theoretical exercise. Like it's actually, the practice makes perfect. The more you do it, the better you get at it. And so knowing that, I think, is an important revelation for me, because I think it's good to learn what we've learned and put it into practice and just do it very often. So I think that's something I'm going to be doing going forward.
Yep. This is something you can do for each other. Remind each other. Serve as peer feedback buddies. Acknowledge when you see people using the leadership practices. Let them know that you see that they're using it. That's possible. Or sometimes when they missed an opportunity. It's easy to forget about new ideas or slip back into old habits. You can help each other with this. practice is important. Joyce?
I would just say to continue to challenge each other to be better.
I see lots of nods. That's really cool.
Yeah, I would say this is really a journey. You know, we have, maybe I'm just feeling more introspective here, but we all have limited time, you know, with what we can do in terms of impact. And so how do we use this in a way to not only impact the organization or work, but really impact each other, serve each other, and support each other, challenge each other, because at the end of the day, we're all humans, and that just, I think, just makes for a better organization. You know, really strengthen our teamwork and what we've created, and I'm hopeful that we can maintain it.
Anyone else? Well, we thank you sincerely for the opportunity to work with you. Andre, you have a closing word?
I'm just inspired. I said it before we did the breakouts and the survey. It's not every group that we work with where you can really tell people got what we wanted them to get out of their experience, but also are holding themselves personally accountable for their learning and development. So congratulations, and thank you all for showing up and for doing some great work and having some really creative and innovative ways of bringing this together and continuing it moving forward.
Yeah.
You're inspiring.
You certainly inspired me as well. If you have not completed your survey, to submit it, please do that before you sign off today so that it doesn't wind up lost somewhere. It's important to us. We got really, really substantive, good feedback from the first cohort, and I know you guys can do the same thing. I've sent a special note to the 4 who were not with us, 2 at all, and 2 had to leave early today. So we look forward to hearing from you. We hope we'll see you again. Our offer to serve as resources is a real one, is an honest one. There may be questions you have, ideas we can suggest to you informally. We are in your toolkit now. And if there are other opportunities for us to continue to work with you in a more formal way, we of course look forward to that as well. Hats off to Nanthani and the leadership team of CHFA for making the time and making this a priority for you all. It is not every leadership team that recognizes this is valuable, that time, quote unquote, away from the demands of your work is every bit as important as that work. And we are really respectful and appreciative of that value, because it will make a difference. It will make a difference. Have a beautiful rest of the afternoon, a wonderful holiday season. We have lots of holidays starting pretty soon. We look forward to hearing from you formally and informally, and keep this stuff going. Keep it going.
Thanks, Joe.
Joe.
Thank you.
Thanks, though.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.